Cleft orthodontics is something which is growing. Like Mamta mentioned to you, that it's growing in big proportions. And compared to the surgical program, it might be small, but it's growing very fast. And we want to cover, most centers. We want to give comprehensive care, and we want to take care of things. So, with this, I'd like to, you know, come to the question about what is a successful orthodontic smile train program. Smile train program, I'd like to just make sure to that all of us are on board, because there are a few surgeons also who are supporting their orthodontic program and are there. We fund specific treatment in smile train. The first is stage 1, where pre-surgical infant orthopedics is done. Now, not all cases are chosen for infant orthopedics. We use moderate to severe cases of cleft deformity where pre-surgical infant orthopedics is done. In stage 2, this is mixed dentition. In the mixed dentition, we cover broadly two groups of patients. One in which active expansion plates are given, either a jack screw, quad helix, NITA expander, coupled fixed appliances, anything which is meant to prepare the arch for a successful bone graft. We also fund face mask therapy in selective cases where it's coupled because the timing for maxillary protraction is similar to that of expansion. Therefore, these are also cases which are included in the smile train program. So mixed dentition orthodontics includes active expansion and face mask therapy. Comprehensive treatment for alignment is basically not meant for all the patients. It's meant for patients where we can do orthodontic alignment and land into a situation where we can prevent the patient from going into an orthognathic surgery. There are some centers where OGS is funded. So these centers are allowed to prepare cases for orthognathic surgery. And we have this software called Smile Train Express, wherein all the patient records are uploaded. So, for a successful program, we need to see the case records. We need to evaluate the efficiency of treatment. We need to, see what are the gaps and how we can build up a successful program. So, a successful program will require you to please work on this. While we were preparing this presentation, the bigger question was coming that, we have some time at hand at the moment because we are not hard pressed with our usual OPDs and our patients. So it's a time to actually upload and work up on the records of the patients which are undergoing treatment. If we can, we should try and, organize our records on Smile Train Express. Well, the two questions which we need to answer after this presentation are, in my eyes, first, cleft orthodontic work while we are in the lockdown, how to tackle emergencies, and how to start Smile Train orthodontics after the lockdown is over. So basically, when we go through this presentation, I would be happy if we are able to come down to some kind of conclusions about what are the orthodontic emergencies, how to sort them out, and how to start cleft orthodontics after the lockdown. Well, the risk relevance for dentistry is an issue. We have to look at this post-lockdown scenario. We have to look at patient considerations. We have to look at clinic considerations and the doctor assistant considerations, because an assistants are very important part of our dentistry or orthodontics per se. Now, everybody has read and everybody is reading, a lot of literature on COVID, and everybody is mentioning that dentistry is among the more risky works in patients or any healthcare setting. So, we have to be doubly careful because we do not want to become a hotbed of spread of corona, or, we do not want to be either way be infected ourselves or our assistants. So, dentistry per se, we are very close to the patient. We are working in the mouth of the patient, and there is a lot of generation of aerosols in most procedures, which orthodontists also do. Well, Once the lockdown is over, proper pre-treatment telephonic and reception screening is something which is recommended across the globe. We need to declutter our operatories and our OPDs and our receptions to allow for inter-appointment disinfection, and also effective without too much time. We have to be very, very, proper in screening our patients, taking proper history, assortment and triage. What patients need emergency care, which can be delayed, which patients can wait, and what are not important right now, what procedures. So we have to be very careful in what patients we select to work at this moment of time. So let's look at some of the clinic considerations which have come up, in discussions and over various advisories. The first thing is select patients before they get an appointment by phone or email. Screen and sanitize the reception. Collection of phones. The phones are the bigger hotbeds of bacterial and viral loads. Surface disinfection of all the tabletops, floor, equipment, HEPA air filtration systems. I'll come to them specifically in each slide. High humidity of air conditioning. It's mentioned that, if your air conditioning is there, high humidity tends to decrease the viral load. Aerosol minimization using high evacuation surgical suctions. So this is something which can be added on to your operatories. Negative pressure operatories if possible in the architectural making of the operatory, UV light in the operatory, and daily briefing of protocol. We need to discuss the protocol with our staff and set it up, because we are not used to this kind of functioning. We need to have hand sanitizers as the patients enter our clinic. We also need to take care of the hierarchy of controls. Everybody is talking about PPEs, but when you look at the hierarchy of control, what the CDC mentions, it says that this is the last hierarchy. This is the least effective. That means that using a PPE to protect the worker with personal protective equipment is not the first line of attack. The first thing which we as clinicians think is that we have to acquire PPEs, we have to acquire things, but we need to work on the elimination, substitution, engineering controls, and administrative controls. So we have to change the way our people work, how our assistants work, and how we are working on the patients. So it's not the PPE which is the bigger issue. It's one of the least effective. It is very, very important, but it's one of the least effective if the upper rungs of this hierarchy are not properly followed. Now, patient education, cough, sneezing, the hygiene, these posters have been recommended by WHO, and they are on sites of CDC, WHO, about how they should come in the operatory and how they should sanitize their hands, wear a mask, and then enter into our operatory. Well, screening is something which we need to take care of, and telephonic screening is the best way. There is a patient risk assessment form. There are patients who are diabetic, patients who have chronic diseases, immunocompromised. We have to take special care. These patients are not urgent to be treated. Also, a consent form is a must. In fact, all societies have created their own COVID consent forms. The Indian Orthodontic Society on its website has already given a COVID consent form for orthodontics. It talks both ways in terms of patient as well as operator safety. So my recommendation is, first thing, that download a form and edit it according to your needs, and then get it filled, whether electronically or in person, but that needs to be filled. A thermal gun to monitor temperature, not only for the patient, but also for your staff. It's a good idea to actually write down the temperature of each employee from the morning half to the evening half every day, and a lot of thermal guns are very easily available. There are just recently, 2 days back, the Rutgers saliva test for coronavirus has got FDA approval. So, we might be landing into some easy tests wherein we can detect whether the patient could be having COVID, or any of our staff or us might be developing it. Another small, it's a very small but a very subtle way of actually screening your patient is a pulse oximeter. The oxygen saturation levels, most patients in India, about 70% of them have shown no symptoms. Most of them have been symptomless. So when they enter your operatory, if we check their oxygen saturation, it will be a good idea, because it gives us an inkling as to whether the oxygen saturation levels are falling and the patient is in a risk of developing issues with the lung. Well, another thing which has been promoted in most parts of the world is teledentistry. And my request to all of you is that there is a free teledentistry course on the American Dental Association website, the ADA website. If you can log on to it and do it, it's a very, it's going to be a game changer in the future, because teledentistry is going to be the future as far as how things will shape up in the future. So, you can educate your patient, you can carry on the instructions for your NAM patients and many other things through teledentistry. And if you log on to this course, which is free of cost, you will be able to learn a bit. Well, everybody is talking about PPEs. And, we are all, scared, because there are a lot of norms, a lot of things given in different parts of the world talking about PPEs. We as dentists have to be careful, because 1 meter away, 100% chance of contamination, 2 meters away, 50%. But we are just into the mouth of the patient. So we have to be worried about what kind of PPE, what kind of protection. So, everybody is marketing a number of PPEs, number of things like KN95 masks, shoe covers, surgical gloves, face shields, protective suits. Everything has been marketed to people. Well, we as orthodontists are not surgeons. So we are not used to wearing surgical gowns. Surgeons do it day in and day out. So we should be aware what are the critical zones of a surgical gown. So specifically the areas around the hand, the front part of the torso, these are the regions which we should be worried about as sources where we can get infection. But we need to minimize PPE use. We have to use them appropriately. We cannot be, using PPE unabatedly. We have to have some norms about how to use a PPE. So what, the government of India gave a guideline, and this is the government guideline. I have just copy pasted it. It says most of them, you should use single use. It should be discarded at every, use. Light colored are preferable to better detect possible contamination. So, you have to weigh about what is available in the market. Also, it says meets or needs ISO 1660 class 3. But what has happened is that these ISO regulations were not available in the country. So the government gave an approval to CITRA. CITRA is the South Indian Association for Fabrics. And they were given a right to actually find out what the fabric was, how many GSM, and whether it was good for the healthcare worker. Similarly, shoe covers need to be made of the same fabric. The government of India in mass gave approval, and any product which is approved by those specific centers are the ones which are recommended, because they have passed particular synthetic blood penetration tests. So, if you are buying any of the PPEs, you have to ensure that it is CITRA approved and it is actually following the norms which the government says a health worker should be wearing. Also, there is a lot of confusion. People are saying, what amount of GSM should my PPE be? This is a chart from WHO. When the Ebola outbreak came up, they said that the PPE GSM should be equivalent to this much. So if you are having a 90 GSM, that is adequate for you to be actually having a security against COVID infection. Now, many times reusable gowns have been recommended. Surgeons use gowns, these are taken off, these are washed, laundered, and then they are put in an autoclave, and then they are reused. So reusable gowns are also a possibility, but it is like the government recommended, it is preferable to have a PPE which can be disposed of. But if you are using a reusable gown and there is a patient on which you suspect that there could be a possible breach, you will then be in a problem. Also, these must be sterilized before use and therefore require steam autoclaving after laundering. So make sure that all these systems are in place if you are using such kind of reusable gowns. When you are using coated or laminated fabrics, make sure that there are no cracks developing. If there are cracks, that means that your fabric is not protecting you enough. And also the kind of detergents or the chemical agents which are being used to clean it. So my recommendation is prefer using a single use PPE rather than ones where you are autoclaving. Now everybody is talking about a lot of masks. What are the different type of masks available in the market? Everybody is recommending a N95 mask. There are better masks, elastomeric respirators, power air purifying respirators, but a N95 mask is supposed to be a gold standard at the moment. Now, what is the difference between a mask and a respirator? Basically, it reduces the chance of blood and other bodily fluids entering the wearer's mouth and nose. So, a respirator is a preferable thing, but many respirators are not available in the market. There are a number of duplicate respirators which are being sold. So one has to be careful and one has to not get carried away by the terminology. N is nothing. N stands for not oil resistant, and R stands for oil resistant, and P stands for oil proof. So, the many names have been given to different kind of respirators, but what you need to take care of is that when you are using an N95 mask or an FFP, which I'll just mention, it should be a tight fit. The problem which is happening is that we are buying N95 mask without understanding that it should fit our facial frame and it should not let air escape. If it is not fitting us properly, then it is of no use. I'll show you how it is to be used. How you use it is that there is a clip which needs to fit on the nose. It shouldn't be the other way around. The two threads should lie above and below and not like this. This is the incorrect way. Never take it off between patients and keep it on your thorax. It's not a good idea. The respirators must be put on correctly and worn properly. They should be snugly fitting the user's mouth and no gaps between the skin and the seal. Also, they must capture 95% of the particles of air. Now, they have valves. The valves have function to eliminate heat and moisture, keep dry and fresh, and reduce the carbon dioxide, because when we are breathing in air, we are breathing out carbon dioxide. Now, if it accumulates, it's going to be harmful for our health. So the valve principle is that when closed, when we exhale, we are able to exhale air without pressure. Now, this is how, like I told you, how do you check the seal? You check the seal by positive pressure checking, meaning put your hands at the corners and try to breathe out. If there is an air leak, that means that the mask is too big for you. Do not use that mask and it's not providing a proper seal. And then try to suck in some air. If the bit of the mask collapses, that means that you have got a good seal. Now, different countries have given different notifications. So don't worry if your respirator says FFP. If it's FFP2 or 3, that is acceptable. In China, the product is called KN95. From Australia, it is P2. From Korea, it's Korea First Class. From Japan, it is DS. So, don't get worried about the terminology. Make sure that you are N95 plus. So, N95 will use all these tests: a bacterial filtration efficiency, particle filtration efficiency, splash resistance, flammability. All the tests are done. And this is the government guideline. Copy pasted from the government site, which says that they should not collapse easily, high filtration efficiency, and should be approved equivalent to the occupational safety guidelines from US. Well, this is the pressure at which it should have minimum resistance. So make sure that you bought a product which is approved for a healthcare worker. The triple layer masks which we are using also should have ISI specifications. Mask reuse. You don't have to dispose of your N95 at every use. If it's not soiled, you can, create, packs like this brown envelope. 5 packs can be put, labeled as day 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and use every mask after the 5th day. That is adequate to be, used successfully and will be a no issue for use. If you want to, sterilize it, there is vaporous hydrogen peroxide, moist heat, and ultraviolet sterilization, and they give a, the reuse limit. If a N95 mask is used, the reuse efficiency is N94.1. So it's not a big deal if you are reusing your N95 mask. Gloves, we all know that we have to use sterile gloves whenever we are in the patient's mouth. Examination gloves, if we are using double pair, the government recommends this. Nitrile gloves, powder free preferably, and outer glove should be long, minimum of 280 millimeter total length. So you have to look at wearing 2 gloves, but the outer glove has to be long. Why so? Because it should be covering the overall which you are wearing. It should be covering the hand element, the wrist element of that overall. Now, there are a number of eye protection gears available. Class 1, 2 are good for us, but nowadays people are indicating this is a face shield. So the government of India has given the guidelines for goggles, what kind of goggles can be used, and it has told that how it can be reused. Well, face shields are what are being preferred by most clinicians because they protect the entire face. In fact, today CDC has given a guideline that a face shield made up of a plastic which is A4 size is inadequate because A4 doesn't cover the full dimensions of the face. So there is a chance that the aerosol might be touching the skin of the neck. So you have to be careful about what product you have chosen for your use. Also, this is a setting which is very important to understand. Which employee, what PPE to use at what situation. Now, for a dental surgeon and a chairside assistant, if you are generating aerosols, you have to wear the full coverall, you have to wear eye protection, you have to use an N95, you have to wear gloves. So, this chart, we have made an advisory. I'm not sure whether it has been given to you, but it will be sent to you, wherein it's kind of a checklist. What all is the minimum requirement when you're doing a particular patient. Now, doffing and donning your PPE, your gowns. There are my suggestion is please log in to the WHO website. The WHO has given a lot of resources. Among them, one of the best ones is how to don and doff a PPE and about hand hygiene. So if you do these, there is a MCQ which is given at the end of the presentation, and if you answer those, you can download a certificate. So the certificate may not be so important. What is important is that they have made a beautiful video and they have made a training resource wherein we can log in and find out how to wear a PPE and how to remove it, because orthodontists per se are not used to wearing surgical gowns or PPEs. Now, also hand hygiene. There are beautiful videos on how using an alcohol-based formulation, how hand hygiene needs to be performed, and in which situations, you can use soap and water. And this is a beautiful chart saying 5 moments of hand hygiene. When you're touching the patient, when you're touching sensitive things, when there is contact with blood, how to use what kind of hand hygiene procedure and what all norms to follow. So my recommendation is please log on to the WHO website and learn these resources. Well, let's summarize. What is a dental emergency? The question is, what patient will come to us with an emergency? Somebody who's having an uncontrolled bleeding, cellulitis, or trauma to the facial bone will come to us as an emergency. But our
Dr. Puneet, Dr. Puneet,
yeah, ma'am.
before we come to emergencies, let's just open this for questions to the audience if they have some questions on the PPEs in the first part, the safety parameters that we covered. And then we can come to the emergencies.
Sure, sure.
So the floor is open. Questions, please go ahead.
Hi, this is Gayatri here from Hyderabad. If I may just ask a simple
Yes,
doubt which
Dr.
I had.
Gayatri. Yes, Dr.
Yes.
Gayatri.
What is the recommendation regarding fogging or fumigation of the dental treatment areas especially?
Yeah.
If this is going to be covered later, I'll just stop it as of now.
No, it is going to be covered later, but I just give a comment that, it's a good idea to do fogging, but at the end of the day, you can fog. There are now quaternary ammonia compounds available, and earlier there were third generation ones, now they are fifth generation ones. So these fifth generation quaternary ammonia compounds can be used to fog the operatory, but the question is that you will have to leave the operatory for about 40 minutes without use, and then it has to be ventilated properly. So while you use your fogger, there is a question which, when you choose your fogging machine, the micro aerosols, the size should be 0.1 to 1 microns. Most of the machines available in the market are selling foggers which are actually of a bigger particle size. The particle size are from 1 to 10 microns, which is not a good idea. It has to be 0.1 micron to be able to actually produce an effective result. So, foggers, many companies are making them, but ensure what particle size. Some of the machines have inbuilt wherein you can change the particle size of fogging, and prefer to use a quaternary ammonia compound, which is the fifth generation.
Thank you.
Dr. Puneet, can I comment on this? I'm Dr. Subodh.
Yes, Dr. Subodh.
Yeah. Now, as far as the use of fogger is concerned, that use should be on hold these days. Foggers are good as far as the bacterial controls are concerned for the operating room, for any area that needs to be sterilized, and all the other specification Dr. Puneet has already told you. But in the COVID era, it is recommended that they not use a fogger, because when you use the fogger, those viral particles, they can go up and settle on the body. Right? So it is better to clean up the area and disinfect the area up to 7 or 8 feet of height, and wipe everything in your work area, OT or your office, whatever, and you wipe with either sodium hypochlorite or with 70% alcohol. You need to clean it. For now, hold fogging.
Yeah. One more comment is that sodium hypochlorite for our dental chairs is not a good idea, because metallic surfaces get corroded. So it is recommended to prefer to use an alcohol-based formulation rather than a sodium hypochlorite on the chair. On the surfaces, it's a very good idea to use sodium hypochlorite. I'll just be coming to that in the subsequent slides. Well, people are recommending use of betadine gargle or hydroxyl mouthwash to decrease the viral load. There's no harm using it before you see a patient. Well, what is a true orthodontic emergency and what is not an emergency? A poking wire causing major discomfort, pain, or bleeding cannot be elevated just by clipping the wire, bending the wire, placing wax on the end of the wire, or rinsing with water, salt water solution, or peroxyl. Now, not an orthodontic emergency is a broken bracket, just a loose band, lost rubber bands, lost key to the appliance, or lost or broken retainer. I'll come to each point separately. The following may be considered as orthodontic emergencies in our setting where we are treating cleft patients. First, severe pain or discomfort or significant intraoral trauma from a sharp wire associated with a fixed appliance. Bonded retainer, NAM plate where the application of wax has failed to provide relief. broken band, bracket, tube, spring from a fixed appliance that has been lost, and there is a possibility of inhalation of the foreign body causing severe laceration. Partial dislodgement of a loose orthodontic band, a transpalatal arch, quad helix, rapid maxillary appliance, lingual arch, NAM plate that cannot be reseated without applying undue force, causing discomfort to the patient. So specifically, if these are the issues, it's an orthodontic emergency. The patient needs your help. There are different ways suggested. You could use orthodontic wax. You could use the, a pencil, the rubber at the back of it could be used to press wherever it's hurting the child at home. And the patient could also bend the wire with this rubber, but many times you will need to schedule an appointment. Now, a beautiful article was just published in the Angle Orthodontist. The Angle Orthodontist, it's free online. You can log on to the site of Angle Orthodontist and download this beautiful article which says how to manage orthodontic emergencies and how the patient can attempt to handle it at home. This was written by a unit in Canada by Dr. Sanjay Suri et al. So it's free online. You can download it. I am just zooming in a table which is given in the article. It says irritation of the lip or cheek from the brackets. Please use relief wax. Even if wax is swallowed, it's harmless. For mouth ulcers, apply a local anesthetist. Elastic ligature with loose from brackets during eating or toothbrushing. You can place it back or let it be. There is no problem. But patients are anxious. Patients are worried that the treatment might go back. So we need to just calm them. Metallic ligatures which have come loose from a bracket, we can just remove them. Broken or loose elastic chains, they can be handled easily by the patient. Loose orthodontic attachments, these can be a cause for worry if any of the attachment has been aspirated by the patient. So make sure that the patient is not showing symptoms of aspiration, difficulty in breathing or difficult airway, so that it can be tackled as an emergency. So if a patient is having sudden difficult breathing or sudden coughing following ingestion of a broken appliance, the patient should go to the emergency department of a hospital. So one has to be careful about where to actually tell the patient that there is a cause for worry. If there is a protruding wire, you can use a cotton swab. And if it's troubling the patient too much and the patient is in an area where he cannot come to you, you can just use a clipper and it can be sniped. But one has to be careful that it doesn't go in or it's not hurting the skin of the patient. So you have to guide him how to use a cotton swab or a cotton bud or a clean pencil eraser to push the wire. Also, if there is a broken retainer, a long gold chain, broken or loose fixed expanders, broken intermaxillary springs, part of appliances embedded in the gingiva, all the instructions are well given. There are all options given that what you could do to actually elevate the problem. So my recommendation is that please go back to this article, download it. We have also put this table in the advisory that all these problems can be handled at home. We have to just be careful, give proper instructions and ensure that the patient is able to do this at home. The Indian Orthodontic Society has also taken out a guideline about how to handle orthodontic emergencies at home. So I have put this also in the advisory, and all of you can download it from the site of the Indian Orthodontic Society. Now, make sure that the patients are social distance from each other, appointments are scattered. Make sure that you remove the waiting area amenities. Even drinking water is recommended to be removed from there because the patient is going to walk in, be treated and walk out. Many places are not allowing washroom use. Make alcoholic disinfectants and masks available to the patient in the waiting area. Air conditioning, I'll come to that, how to handle it. Hand pieces are an issue because if they don't have anti-reflux to avoid contamination, they are going to become a source of cross-contamination. Preferable use of rubber dams, salivary ejectors, very difficult in an orthodontic patient because we are not dealing with one tooth. We are dealing with the entire arch. Microbial mouth rinses I mentioned to you, but in radiographs, it is recommended that bigger radiographs would be a better thing to use compared to an IOPA X-ray. So OPG is a better way of taking a radiograph if required than an IOPA X-ray. Make sure that you minimize the creation of aerosol, reduce chairside time, minimize doctor to patient contact, find the middle ground and allow for future improvement or upgradations, and a balanced approach to satisfy the patient's need and looking after the well-being. Now, what are the methods of reducing contamination? We just studied that, barriers will help us, but masks can filter only up to 95%. If, and leakage might happen sometimes. So mask might be removed at the time of procedure. These mouthwashes beforehand, they are not foolproof either, because this will remove the free floating microorganisms. But there are some microorganisms in plaque, in subgingival organisms also. So, it's not a foolproof way either. High vacuum evacuators also are not a foolproof method. High efficiency particulate air filters and UV light only effective once the organisms are already in the room's air. And so, all these controls have their limitations. What has been suggested is prefer an electrical handpiece. Many countries it's still not available. They are recommending high volume evacuators to be used. Most of the dental chairs which we use have high vac suctions available. So that's a good idea. Now, this picture is very critical. How we practice dentistry. If we are at 11 degrees to the patient, the chance of the aerosol directly coming on the spatter, coming on our face or on, our PPE is minimal. So, be careful while you position yourself while you're on the dental chair. Glass ionomer cement is very good if you want to, because there is no issue with the moisture. Now, orthodontic procedures per se, all of them, look at debond, look at bracket failure, repair of a fixed retainer, removal of fixed devices, placement of a new retainer, bonding, everything produces aerosols. It's an aerosol generating procedure. So how do you solve it? Now, very good guidelines have just come up from the British Orthodontic Society. These guidelines mention everything. If you want to bond in a patient, light cure GIC is a good bonding agent. The bond strength may be compromised a bit. But if you are used to your regular bonding, prefer to use self-etching primers. Self-etching primers they require moisture for their bonding. So if you are using self-etching primers, you are good. You will be able to bond. You want to dry. So, our dental chair has got air water spray. Prefer to use a dryer, the dryer which you use for the hair. That is a better way, because there is no, compressed air in it. Repair of brackets. You've removed a bracket and the patient, it's a very area where it needs to be bonded back. So you can place a band if required in the premolar region, or bond it with GIC. If you are removing fixed appliances, the issue is how to remove the adhesive. How you will remove the cement. So use hand instruments. They are tedious. We find it very easy to remove the remnant of the cement with our hand pieces, but it's better to use hand instruments instead. Now, fitting of a removable appliance. It's pertinent to us because we are giving a NAM appliance. So consider that when you are trimming acrylic, even of a new appliance which has been tried in the baby's mouth, it should be considered as an aerosol generating procedure. So you should have, while you're trimming the appliance, a high vacuum evacuation system for the shavings of acrylic which are coming out of there. So be careful, because it is required for both the health of the patient as well as your own staff and yourself. Removal of fixed retainers, high vacuum evacuators need to be done, but when you are using lingual surfaces of incisors, use hand scalers or Michel trimmers. Don't use your regular hand pieces. Again, aligner attachments can also be adjusted with adhesive removal tools. Taking impressions. Most of us think that taking an impression is not an aerosol generating procedure. It's a new baby who has come to us and we are taking an impression for NAM. Well, if the baby coughs or gags, it will become an aerosol generating procedure. So one has to be very careful when we are making impressions. We should have a high vacuum suction in place. While the impressions are taken, they need to be sterilized. They need to be put in glutaraldehyde for 10 minutes before they are sent to the laboratory. Also, considerations to be given using removable retainers. Always when you are giving, give a removable retainer along with your fixed, because if the fixed one is broken, you can use the removable one. Autoclave each instrument for every patient. When you deband, use band removing pliers, Michel trimmers or hand scalers, and adhesive removing pliers. Let some of the remnant be. Do not use a tungsten carbide burr because we want a dry environment. We do not want to generate aerosols, right? Also, if you want to use your air, use a chip blower instead of your air syringe. It pushes in air with a lot of pressure and has the potential to create aerosols. Now let's look at each situation one by one. For NAM procedures, following non-emergency measures are suggested. Try to use Dynaclef type or nasal elevator only, because when you will use a NAM appliance, you will need adjustments. If you are used to using a complete NAM appliance with acrylic, try to make it into the final shape where you want to reach, the final arch alignment, so that no trimming or addition of reliner is required, right? So this will save you a problem and these patients will be benefited. The problem with us orthodontists is that these patients of NAM, when we do molding, the first few months are very important because of the maternal estrogens being high. We don't want to lose on time. So if you are making an impression, be careful that you have not generated aerosols, sterilize your impression tray, and also when you give an appliance, make the appliance so that all the trimming and all the adjustments have already been done. Preferable to use nasal elevator and taping alone. Let's look at a situation for bone graft. You've got a NITA expander or a quad helix in place or a screw based activation appliance. Now the patient has lost the key. No issues. Tell them to wait. Expander lying in place, motivate your patient, tell them nothing's going to go wrong. We have to wait because now whatever adjustments will be done, they can be done later. There is no hurry. There is no issue. These are self-limiting appliances. A NITA expander is of a fixed size. So it cannot be causing any harm to the patient. Face masks. If the patient has finished with the elastics, the elastics can be left outside the clinic or the hospital, and the patient's attendant, if he is allowed to travel, can pick it up. If they cannot, there is no problem. We can wait. Traction can be controlled. If there is an issue, you can even reduce the traction force for some time. So you can counsel the patient on screw activation very easily. So don't get overboard for these patients. Also, orthognathic surgery is a total no-no at the moment. Why so? Because when the osteotomy is done, the aerosols are produced. So you would like to motivate and inform your patients of orthognathic surgery that they have to wait for some time. And while they wait, it is very important to follow strict hygiene and appliance maintenance protocols. If we are undergoing distraction, maxillary distraction, we need to guide them about screw activation. We need to guide them about the elastic traction because it's a critical phase while distraction is going on. So the rest of the patients, we have to tell them that we have to wait, and our convincing and our telling them is a good enough thing for them to understand. Now, autoclaving, very good autoclaving has to be done. We have to maintain a very good sterilization cycle, both for the benefit of our staff and patients. The issue mostly happens with air water syringes, their tips, hand instruments, and impression trays. So all of them have to be sterile. Numerous chemicals can be used for the dental unit water lines. Sodium hypochlorite is preferred. Chlorhexidine gluconate is also preferred. Hydrogen peroxide is also preferred. Biomedical waste will become a big issue now. Why? Because you using a PP and other things, they have to be disposed of. So when you do a contract, when a hospital or a clinic or a setup has done a contract with the biomedical waste management company, they have done a contract for a few kgs of material. So this will be altered and we have to dispose them off in a good way, because in a recent discussion with surgeons, the bigger problem is when you remove your PPE. That is an area where viral load is more. So you have to be very careful how you dispose of these wastes. So every area will have their waste norms. Now, general guidelines are simple. They are for everyone. You know, when you're going back to home, put your keys in a box. You know, take off your shoes, remove your phone, have a bath before you, and you know, sanitize your hands before you actually talk to any member in the family or touch them. Well, there are numerous, like was discussed earlier, foggers and fumigation devices and aerosol protection domes. Many things have been suggested, but I would recommend all of you to look at these guidelines. These guidelines are by the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. This is freely downloadable from the government site. It talks about guidelines for infection prevention and control in healthcare facilities. So, you know, whatever are the queries can be sorted out here. It's got beautiful tables. Now look at this table. This talks about preparation of hypochlorite of 0.5%, 1% and 2% concentration. So, you know, you can easily find out how to make the hypochlorite of whatever concentration is required for particular purpose. So and there is a disclaimer below saying that this solution is unstable rapidly. So freshly prepared one daily has to be used. So, and also that it can be corrosive. So protect metal instruments by thoroughly rinsing them with water after soaking for 10 minutes. So, you know, the government has given beautiful guidelines. You can download this and keep them for your reference. They have given commonly cleaning agents and disinfectants like sodium hypochlorite, bleaching powder, alcohol-based detergents with enzymes. All are given and their precautions, what you should do while using them. For example, alcohol-based could be flammable. So you have to use your equipment in such a way that you are not close to a place where you are generating heat. Basilol for, you know, cleaning your chair, D195 quaternary ammonia compound. Many things are available. You choose your, you know, disinfectant and then follow the norms which you have said, SOPs for your setup. Well, extraoral dental suction systems are available which will suck in the aerosols which are generated, but they are not foolproof. They can suck in 85 to 90% of the aerosols. Now there are also air purifiers with dehumidifiers available. There are UV, you know, lights available. Try to understand. One word of caution I want to say that all of us who have been in the lockdown, we have actually not been exposed to vitamin D. We have not been exposed to the sun, and vitamin D has been shown to be a relationship of your immunity levels. So it is good to boost your immunity. Have vitamin D, have some zinc, have some vitamin C to actually bring your immunity to normal levels. Do some exercise. This is just a general guideline. The question which is asked everywhere is, can we, after wearing this PPE, we are stuck. You know, you feel that you as an orthodontist, you've never worn it. So you want to come out of it and you are sweating like anything. So make sure that you are following the norms for ACs which are being used. If it is a centralized air conditioner for your hospital, then there is an issue. If it's a window AC, not a major deal, but I would recommend that you log on to the Indian Journal, you know, the site for the Indian Refrigeration and Air, you know, Heating Engineers site. They have given a beautiful layout for operatories. The layout says that you have to control the humidity. It should be between 40 to 60%. Air filtration and cleaning should be with HEPA filters preferably. What kind of air filtration you need? It mentions that high risk areas, high density areas, laboratories and you know, setups, medical facilities will require HEPA filters above E12 or H13 standards. So ensure that if you are taking a product, you are taking the correct product. Make your environment germ free. The ventilation should be very good. You know, there should be no breeding of viruses, bacteria and pollen. Cleaning, maintaining the ventilation system is important for efficient performance. They mention that, you know, you will be putting on your AC after a lot of time. You know, you have been in quarantine for a lot, you've been in home arrest for about a month or so or 2 months. Now you're going to put on your AC. So make sure that you set the temperatures between 24 to 30 degrees. maintain relative humidity of 40 to 70 degrees, and advisable to prefer a MERV 13 plus filter. Make sure that there is some way of actually letting this air, large duct AHUs, to keep the coils continuously clean and disinfected. So this is my call, that one has to be very, very sure about how to disinfect and maintain good hygiene in your surroundings. And while I end this presentation and we will be open to questions, I would have a request to all of you that please, while when a fisherman cannot go to sea, they repair their nets. What can we do is, at this period of time, set up SOPs for our systems in place, and also whatever patients records we are having, we should please kindly upload them on the STX. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Puneet. We can now take questions. Dr. Kamlesh, you wanted to ask a question. Please go ahead.
Yeah, how we can use the ultraviolet radiation?
There are units available. The issue is there are ultraviolet units available which can help in actually disinfecting your environment, but they are time consuming. Your operatory will have to be, with the unit to be used, it has to be free for at least 1 hour after every patient.
Sir, hello.
Yeah, Dr. Kamble.
Thank you.
Yeah, madam, how to start the new patient which has come to our center? 2 cases of NAM reported last week.
Very good question.
Whether we should start with it or wait for some time?
No, a very good question. See, NAM patients, we are losing on time because their estrogen levels are declining by every week. So what you can do is, if the patient is not a high risk, I mean he is not from an area where there are a lot of COVID cases, you can start off with taping and nasal elevation.
Okay. So, sir, problem is that hospital administration has kept that patient into isolation for 14 days. So whether we should request them to allow us to start
for 14 days. We have to follow the rules of the local administration. We have to follow the rules of that local area as well as the hospital. Wait for 14 days and then start off with taping and nasal elevation.
Okay, sir. Fine.
One thing I'd like to add, that people are talking about chemo prophylaxis using HCQ. So there is still no evidence to say that for a clinician who's working on patients, HCQ could be beneficial or non-beneficial. In fact, initially ICMR took out a guideline saying that you can take HCQ before you start your patients. You 2 doses first, and then every week followed for 7 weeks you can take 400 milligram. But still there is no evidence related with it. There have been reports saying that people who had HCQ had less chances of getting infection, but there is still no evidence available.
Dr. Puneet, Dr. Kamble has another question on appliances which have already been given. How to follow up on them?
Appliances, like I mentioned, there are NAM appliances in place. They have to be followed up. You can, do trimming for one time only and bring about the final arch form for the patient. And while you do this trimming of acrylic, ensure that the high vacuum suction is there and you are putting it in the chamber where the aerosol is not coming into the operatory. And you can do it in one step. In fact, if you want to know more about it, we published this in the Indian Journal of Cleft Lip and Palate and Craniofacial Anomalies, single step versus multiple step NAM. So if you can download that article, it's called the Yen technique, wherein you can make the arch form as the final arch form for the patient, and then trim your appliance as to where you want to reach your major and minor segments into. Actually, it's difficult for all the dental people to come to how to deal with COVID at the moment, because we have been trained in a very different way. And for the surgeons, it is part of their routine to actually wear PPEs and operate and follow up all the norms and things. For dental people, it is a new thing. And it, things, what happened during the HIV time was that most of the dentists would do patients without wearing gloves. you know, and it was in the year, I remember 1999, people started saying that you have to wear gloves before you touch a patient. It's not safe for you. And after that, people started wearing gloves and it became a routine. So what I'm expecting is that all these PPs, you know, all these norms will come into force in some way or the other, but it will become part of our systems. Only thing is we have to practice, and we have to, you know, re-practice the SOPs which we have created for ourselves. So that's my feeling, that all this will be difficult to use for dentists, but they will be able to finally overcome.
Thank you.